Africa Radio.
Behind him, he could hear those innocent voices crying out so bitterly, saying, "We did not start the war, but we're fighting now. We did not start this fire, but we're burning now." They were told many years ago that their country is free, but they didn't understand that it's not real.
This is Jafric Radio.
They never knew it was the Mickey Mouse freedom, yeah. Mickey Mouse freedom,
This is Jafric Radio.
Well, good evening, viewers. It's yet another Saturday, and today happens to be 24th of December 2022. We are cruising to the end of the year. And this is Jafric Radio, your prime vision in Tokyo. Toda. We've come back to you with another edition of African Today. I am your host today, or sitting host today, for our regular host, Mr. William Asiedu. And my name, as you can see on the television or on your screens, is Yahaya Seidu. We are going to do the second part of our last program, which was aired on the 16th of last 2 weeks. The topic for the day was, why are our textbooks not in our local language? That is African language. Why are our textbooks not in our local language? And we had a resource person who helped us that day to understand certain things. We couldn't finish, and we want to continue with it to dip more into it. So before I introduce my panelists to you, I want us to go into the commercials. So when we come back, I will introduce my panelists, and then we will proceed from there. Thank you.
Fellow Kukudites, NPP Mamwa Japan, Afiaso, and Untimum Penninfo, under the leadership of Honorable Nana Alhaji Abdul Razak, Chairman, Honorable George Afro, Secretary, and Honorable Kofi Edubwa, and Aduna friend Prof. Twinsadia Framo said, Afi 2022 Ekuniwi, and Intia Busumi Shemu Dieno, December Dieno, yet Dani Nikakra. Metra said, after COVID economy, the NPP needs some respite. Netra said, December Wedi, Strong Kokra, Every said, a bay edidie, or num, Yavia, that Dunduna Manu. Na fiya hunu yede yenim ene the chairman honorable Nana Alhaji Abdul Razak ni amanyokoni mpenimfo Japan nyina tonsa dia friends December 25th 2022 ye shemu ewo Soka Machibradanchi Saitama ni aye end of year party no Jumedie ya tonsa dia friend ntini ni ekukudambe te say Her Excellency Mrs. Genevieve Edna Apalu Ghana Ambassador
This is Jafric Radio.
Owura Kwesi Chei Amwaben, Owura Peter Owan, Dr. Bernard Opon Kwesi, Owura Christian Osei Ayesu, Owura Newman, Owura Bio, and afi Dr. Samuel Amponsa, and Wechi, that twinsa da frere the Ghanaian Muslim community, Church of Pentecost, and other Christian communities nina. And it's all your NPP ba wa Japan, and abebia ubetimi abebieno. Yensu kwine, Brani and Kambum, ni yenchieni, yewia, yadunjune NPP amanyo kwenin kanko. Jumadie, emo kwenya, mawani NPP amanyo kwenin peniphobi edieshia, na manyokufa di entemene so, edimu, kai, se Sunday, December 25th, 2022, Soka Machibradanchi, Saitama, kai, se 2024 elections, working together, winning together, growing together.
This is Jafric Radio.
Thank you very much for the commercials. Viewers, you are warm welcome back to the studios or to your screens. I have with me Mr. Ashley. Mr. Ashley is a wonderful and a research personality who comes from one of the African countries and is living in Tokyo. Mr. Ashley, you are welcome.
Thank you for receiving me.
Thank you very much. Viewers, as I said earlier on, last 2 weeks, we dealt with this very topic. And the wonderful gentleman who helped me was Mr. Achille Gedas. And he made us to understand that Africa has a lot of problems when it comes to language. He made us to understand that we have about 120 million French speakers in Africa, about 150 million English speakers in Africa, and then 160 million Arabic speakers in the whole Africa. So when you factor this into the broader topic that we are talking about, why are our textbooks not in our local languages in Africa? It tells you that all these languages, these three main languages that are taking dominant of our textbooks, or that is being used as a medium of instruction in our textbooks and the schools, are foreign languages. So the question comes, why? And Mr. Ashley made us to understand that indeed there are a lot of challenges when it comes to making a policy to deal with language. So for the 50 years and over that we have had independence, language was brought in by the Europeans who colonized us and then tried to change our way of learning into their own so that it will suit their businesses and sciences and other things. Therefore, Apart from that, it has become very difficult for Africans leaders to look into the big picture of formulating policies that will bring back our languages. If you look at this report from Pedagogy, Culture, and Society, they stated that, I quote, education, whether formal or informal, is perceived as development and language in the major medium of as the major medium of instruction and communication through which knowledge is transmitted, documented, through which language is transmitted, full stop. Documented substantial evidence indicate that Africa was on a positive trend to steady development before colonialism set in. Colonialism ushered in a foreign method of instruction and disoriented the African technology and the overall education system. So if you go by this, it means when before colonialism came, Africans were having a way of dealing with the education, handling it, and what they have developed. But when they came in, they did their best with the support of some of our leaders to be able to change the narrative, the foresight of African leaders, the research and the development that they were doing to bring their own in so that it will help them to move their agenda of colonizing us and also making sure that the narration when it comes to education and business follow their pattern. Mr. Ashley, what do you have to say to this? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Host, Yahada Seidu. I agree with the statement you've just read, saying that documentation is really important in terms of knowledge provision. What has lacked in Africa, because, well, in Africa, unfortunately, we rely on Western textbooks, which means that sometimes the information, most of the time, the information is biased. It provides sketchy information on important topics. I think in terms of textbooks not being available in local languages, like I said last time, Africa, I think, needs to decolonization. I mean, the second phase. And this is supported by Professor Sabelo Ndlovu from South Africa, who's working a lot on epistemology, referring to the decolonization of our minds, of education. Because if most of African countries have known decolonization in the 1960s, political decolonization, but we still need educational one. So the challenges of textbooks not in our local languages, how many? I think you did well in reminding some of the figures. I mean, like the French speakers, English speakers, and Arabic. You see, in those statistics, there is no Lingala, there is no Yoruba, there is no Swahili, there is no Ashanti, Awa. So you see, it's a problem for us Africans. Why I provided a statistic? Because for me, it should be the reverse way. We shouldn't have a country like Gabon, for example, mine, dominated by French language, because we have our own languages. We can use it because it's an international language, but in our own vernacular languages, there are more than 50s. But majority of Gabonese, they don't speak their vernacular languages. So I think a lot of work is to be done by our national government in Ghana, in Gabon, in Senegal, in Nigeria, in terms of promoting our local languages. And once we will promote enough, and once these languages will be spoken, now I think we'll have made a really big step toward achieving an important goal, which is, I mean, to appropriate ourselves of education system, because clearly we depends a lot on the Western education system. So I think it lies on our government. I mean, because the government in the country is to regulate. So that's that this has to be, I mean, impulse. I mean, it has to be, how to say, the momentum has to be given by our authorities. So yeah, I think, while I agree that we really need, I mean, textbooks available in our local languages, but there is a process. Let me stick to my initial word of the process. How do we do that? So I think you and I, we already had some ideas, I mean, last time. And we have to build on those ideas, because the regional organizations such as the African Union or regional blocks, ECOWAS or the ICAS in Central Africa, they also wait. They expect suggestions coming from us, young African scholars, to provide some ideas. So I really think that we first need to promote our local languages, to speak local languages, and after that, that we can maybe notice the reverse, and see how now textbooks can be widely implemented. So yeah, I think this is what I can say in reaction to the statement that you've read.
Thank you very much, Mr.
This is Jeffrey.
Gildas Ashley. Mr. Ashley, was
Yes.
talking to colleagues and some educationists, assessing their view on the use of what they think about the using African language as a medium of instruction, or using them in our textbooks. This is what one African professor told me. He said, the proponents of English as a medium of instruction in the education system will say that Africa is fortunate to have English because it is a global language of science, technology, and academics in general. English as a language is heavily entrenched in the education system and has massive literature in almost every discipline, and therefore a major international language of education and communication. So, this professor, do you agree completely with him that we are fortunate to have English as a medium of education through which we attain our education or through which we are instructed, we take our instruction? Do you also think, number two, do you also think it has helped Africa in general, the youth, or when it comes to education, it has helped Africa moving forward, or Africa has retrogressed when it comes to understanding of subject matter in English? Number one, do you agree with him saying that
Okay.
we are fortunate to have the English, which means it has helped us, in a nutshell, it has helped us in developing? Do you agree to that, or what do you have to say to that?
I partly agree with the professor, that African professor. I agree that it's an advantage. I agree that it's really beneficial to have English beside our local language in terms of the globalization, in terms of really being integrated to the global system, having studied and having acquired knowledge. But
This is
I'm a
Jafric
bit
Radio.
skeptical because I don't think that the English language has necessarily brought any development, because I think that's one of the statements I've just listened coming from him. So in terms of moving forward, or in terms of that aspect, no, I don't think that, because if we think that way, it means that we can sit back. We don't have to think about developing our own textbooks in our local languages. Look at Japan, for example. Look at the trajectory of Japan. Japan, they use hiragana, katakana, and kanji like most Asian countries. English is the second language for some, or even the third. You don't necessarily need English in Japan to work, but it's a developed country. So that's how to say, just to indicate that while English is an international language, it has really helped a lot of us. To acquire global education. I'm a French speaker originally. Gabon has been colonized by the French people. I speak my mother tongue. But thanks to English, I'm here. I went to South Africa. I went to many places. I visited 5 to 6 African countries, English-speaking countries. I'm here in Japan, and the medium of communication in my university is English. So based on that, I agree with that professor. But saying that in terms of development, I'm not sure, because African countries, most of them, I think Ghana got independence well before. I think it was if I'm not mistaken, 1957. But look at African countries as a whole. Compare, to countries like, Dubai, the UAE in general, or the Asian countries, having also known more or less, because in the 1960s, Korea, Singapore, and the Four Dragons, we had more or less the same economies. So I can't really say that English language contributed to development. What is that development? That's the question. So yeah, I partly share his view.
Okay. To me,
This is Jafric Radio.
I completely disagree, because if a child is born, the child, according to psychology, the child is very smart from the age of 6 months to 14 years. And why? Why is he or she smart at that level? What language does he listen? Does he hear at that level? It is his mother's tongue. So whatever the mother in that child stays more with the child, understanding of issues, understanding of subject matters easily than any other language that we give to him. So you can see that most of the children who are doing very good at English, their parents started English with them right from birth, and they are very good, and their accents are a bit different. But those of us whose parents started our tongue with us, we pick the English somewhere, we go through class 1, through our basic level, we don't even understand most of the subjects that has been taught. Even sometimes you are able to detect that a teacher doesn't even understand what he's teaching, but just that he has memorized it. That tells you the shortfall. But assuming it is the mother language that the child was brought up from, right from the 6 months to that 14 years, where the child is able to develop completely and position him or herself at a road where he could face the actuals, if I should use, for want of adjective, to face the actuals of subjects, then you can see that using the language, foreign language, as a medium of instruction does not help us. You can go back with your own classmates. Many of them, we exit school, the basic school or the junior high school, that as they grow, then they become more mature, then they begin to, at that level, they could not even read and understand well. But once they get into the market, then they are out of school, they begin to understand certain things more easily. And then they bite their fingers that this was like this and I couldn't understand at school. And they do better. So to me, the language that will help us develop very well, I don't think it's English or it's a foreign language. It is the mother tongue. So if all African countries would do as the Zimbabwean and the South African have started doing, then I think it will help us, and it will help masses. It will move most of the masses from the streets, hawking, into industries, manufacturing, technology, and what have you, more than what we see now. So it is only few who are lucky and are able to be a bit smart, to be able to grab the language at a certain level, who are able to move with the system. The masses are left behind. But you use Japan as an example. Japan, they don't require children to learn so many things. They learn mostly the language and the writing of it, and then arithmetics at the basic level, basic arithmetics, and then the language, and then the culture. When they are able to read and write, they are able to do research, and they are being taught through how to do research and take memos and jot points, or how to use the logbooks and what have you. So once they cross the junior high school, they are well equipped and they are ready to take any challenge when it comes to technology, because it is in their language. So that is why they develop, and they are growing, they keep on growing, and they are not using English or French or Arabic, but rather they're Japanese, but they fall within the developed countries. And you and me are a proud witness to this. So I think the policy makers should begin looking at that level and try to do they propose some policies that will be able to help the continent move through local language. After all, as I said last 2 weeks, whatever we learn from the basic level to the university level, even when we went to do our education in the English speaking countries, they still assess us. So what is the value in writing those so much that language there? Meanwhile, Japanese, they are not assessed. If they don't learn English, they only learn the alphabet, but they go and sit with this same exam with that. They pick it, they use all 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, and study it, and they pass through the basics that they need for the course that they want to go and do. So they get broader picture in the subject area than us. That is why you could see that all African schools, what happened is that the children are taught what we call examination topics instead of subject-based or course-based. So, Mr. Ashley, I disagree with the good professor, even though he's entitled to his opinion, but personally, this is mine. So, Mr. Ashley, what can you say about the policy makers? What advice will you have for them if we should develop our language, we use our language at the basic level? What advice will you have for them? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But I think you've already touched on those points. A quick response will be to follow South African and Zimbabwe examples. I mean, what they have initiated in terms of including languages into the curriculum. Broadly speaking, that's what I can say. I agree with what you've said. In fact, what I was talking about English, I was referring to people like you and I, in terms of having traveled, having benefited from quality education based on the English language. But the other point was, it doesn't necessarily translate into the development because development is something else. That was my my point. I mean, the contention, with regard to the statement of the professor. And you said, yeah, he's entitled to his opinion. So, yeah, in Africa, I think that they should really dig deep to what South Africa and Zimbabwe are trying to do, because we all agree that having textbooks available in our local languages is the way forward, is the way to go, because, well, we have examples with Asian countries. We said it more than once. So I think really they should start thinking about it because Africa is lagging behind, also part of that lack of that's an availability of our textbooks. We have to rely on Western textbooks in terms of information provision. Sometimes those people, most of the time, they have written textbooks for us, telling the history that us Africans should tell, which is shameful because, well, a European or an American cannot tell the story of Ghana or Nigeria, of Gabon, better than us. So that's the unfortunate part. And that's why I really think that we need to think hard about trying to implement textbooks in our local languages, into the curriculum of schools, from primary to the university. Yeah, so we can really get to speak, because in Africa, I really think that when you look at the African Union working languages, English, French, Arabic, and Portuguese, is so unfortunate that there is no African language, which is not the case. When you look at the European Union, I mean, their working languages are their languages, German, French, English, and other languages. Yeah. But so in Africa, it shouldn't be the case. So, yeah, I think that we should really think about it now. I mean, we don't need to think if there are benefits. I can only see advantages of really having textbooks available in our local languages, because it's also part of the globalization process, because globalization was imposed on us in Africa. And if you look at even the SDGs today, the West, they create Millennium Development Goals or Sustainable Development Goals, I mean, for us, Africa, because when you look at the content, it's really for Africans to try to, I mean, for late comers, you know, to try to close the gap. So it's really important to invent ourselves, to reinvent, actually. Yeah, and one way of doing that is through languages. So yeah, that's what I can say in terms of my recommendation to policymakers in Africa to really take example of Zimbabwe and South Africa.
Thank you.
Or Asian countries. Yeah.
Thank you very much. At this
is Jafric Radio.
Break. When we come back, I will ask you a specific question. So I want to put it to you.
Okay.
Before we go on commercial, when we come back, you will try to address it for assuming that you are being asked as a researcher, assuming you are being asked to make a proposal or to see linguistics, to make proposals for linguists to be able to use and develop our educational instruction medium of educational instruction in one of the African countries. Which country will you use, or will you advise? Because we have many countries and some have started it in a way. So I want you to do that for us so that listeners will appreciate, and then they also see how we can start thinking about such. So which African country will you admire in terms of what they have done so far when it comes to language, if you are being asked to advise?
Okay.
So when we come back, please do that for me. Mr. Producer, please, let's go on commercial break so that our sponsors too will be acknowledged and viewers to know who are those behind us, helping us, that through them we are able to bring this particular program to you. Thank you.
This is Jafric Radio.
You are listening and watching Jafric Radio.
Check it out, it's awesome.
Like, subscribe, share all our social media handles. Arigato, bye bye, share. Jafric Radio is affiliated with Adum FM.
Chiankoma Nana Ya Pop, Jafric Radio.
Good morning, and come out the entire crew. Nana Ya Pop and the entire crew. Jafric Radio Japan. Good morning.
You are watching Jafik Radio live. You are watching Jafik Radio live. You are watching Jafik Radio live. You are watching Jafik Radio live.
We love you. Congratulations. We love you. Yeah,
Jafrik Radio.
Yeah, Jafrik Radio.
Echiche omu nyina. Ghana de sha omu tie o Japan nyina.
This is Jafrik Radio. This is Jafrik Radio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Producer. Viewers, you are welcome back to Voice of Africa, a program that is designed to look into Africa and discuss issues that are of importance to the continent. And with me in the program is Mr. Ashley. I am your host, or sitting host, or caretaker host, Yahaya Seidu, sitting in for Mr. William Asiedu, the regular host. It's because of one or two things, he's unable to be with us today, so I've been asked to sit in for him. Wherever he is, may Allah be with him and be with us all. Mr. Ashley, before we went on a commercial break, I posed a question to you. What do you have to say? What can you say? Or what do you have to, how will you advise?
Okay, thank you. I think the country, that's for me, I don't have a holistic picture of countries having already an advanced discussions. But from my experience, having studied in South Africa, because I spent 10 years in South Africa, I did my university there. I started the university there up to the master's level, and I also had a couple of years of professional experience. I just want to remind this to the audience. And from that experience, I could observe that in South Africa, they are really entrenched. I mean, they're really keen on preserving their languages. I remember one of my friends back in 2005-06 wanted to go to Stellenbosch University. And to do undergrad there, some classes are given in Afrikaans. Afrikaans is one of the languages spoken in South Africa. And I would watch most debates in parliament. And in parliament, people are free to speak in Zulu, in Xhosa, isiDembele. So English is not compulsory. They have professional translators. In some schools, especially in semi-rural areas, it happens in those languages. That's to indicate how far the country is in terms of preserving their local languages. So, responding to your question, I think South Africa case will be one of the best illustrations in terms of how other countries can replicate, can really think about moving forward with this debate of textbooks in our local languages or promoting local languages. So I'm speaking from experience.
Okay. I think I'm losing your voice. We are not hearing you. Producer, please, if you are
Yeah,
there.
can see that.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashley. Let me read through a questionnaire or a research that was done into a program about language medium of instruction in Zimbabwe. And then
Okay.
some of the comments the teachers said and some of the comments some of the students said. It's very long. I'll just read just a few and I'll leave it there. Probably next 2 weeks when Mr. Asiedu is in, we can continue from there. And when after finishing, I'll ask you for your final comment on the program so that we call it a day. This study, I just want to pick it from the middle. Below is what transpired from a study on the assessment of the challenges learners face when English is used as a medium of instruction in secondary schools classroom settings, its implications on the attainment of knowledge and skills among learners in secondary schools. The implication, a local language such as Luganda as a medium of instruction were also studied to assess the difference in knowledge and skills acquisition. This is it. The study revealed that students in secondary schools grapple with acquiring the medium of instruction as well as learning the content being taught in a specific discipline. Responses from the majority of the teachers indicated that a substantial number of students join secondary school when their level of matured intelligibility in English is very low. In such circumstances, the study revealed that teachers either vary their language to suit the level of the learner or contextualize related content to familiar subjects, or leave it to the learner to figure out the meaning of the content by encouraging them to do further reading. Students almost spend the entire lower secondary schools, that is senior 1 to 4, that is 11 years of schooling since primary school, mastering the language, in addition to acquiring the content in the different disciplines offered. It was further revealed that the medium of instruction is challenged to students in both rural areas as well as urban ones. Although the study found that the former were adversely affected, many respondents pointed to the issue of medium of instruction as a bottleneck to the acquisition of content, especially in biology. However, some students had to resort to their teachers to lower everything into their local language before they understand. And when they do, they are able to produce answers which suit exactly the English meaning or context. So this is a piece, half of it. This is to satisfy or
This
to
is
clarify
Jafric Radio.
most of the students, they use 11 years to study, right from primary up to junior high school, and they get into the secondary school, which is about 11 years period. But they don't understand exactly what they are being taught, some of the terms. But when the teachers are able to identify that and they try to bring the language, the meaning into their local language, and you pose the questions to them, they are able to give you answers, which is exactly as what the English medium, or if they use the English medium, or those who understand the English, are able to give. So you see, this tells you that the children are left in, or the students are left in a dark. They don't even know exactly what they are in, even though they are in secondary school. They've passed through the system, they've been listening to the English instructions and whatever. Meanwhile, they go home, they spend more time with their parents, more time with their colleagues in the community, using their local language. They only use the English when it comes to the school setting. So how will they understand? They wouldn't. And we cannot also turn to be the English. So you see, so this affirms the position of those who are saying that the African children will do better if we move, or the policy makers are able to reconsider or begin to think that line and make sure they make our textbooks or our medium of instruction in the local language, especially the basic side. So, Mr. Ashley, this is to confirm. I just read that one to confirm that we are not doing ourselves any good, but rather we are harming ourselves by using the English language, the French language, and the Arabic to those who use those languages. It is better we go back, we quell back into our shell, think around the ball, and it's able to, at least the basic level, give the instructions in them, get the textbooks in the basic level for the children between the primary or the first 10 years or 11 years of their educational life. So, Mr. Ashiri, we don't have much time. I'll ask you to wrap up, and then we call it a day. So, in 1 minute, what will you say to our listeners?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I think I will start my conclusion with the ending part of your statement, saying that we're not doing ourselves any good with Western languages, in particular English, French, or Portuguese, because these are the main languages spoken in Africa. In line with what we've discussed tonight, I think policymakers should think of starting to implement in our local languages into the curriculum, educational system. And as one of your questions with regards to the model, I mean, that country, that can be a role model. I think African countries can learn from countries like South Africa in terms of how they do with the educational system, with languages they have. They have 11 official languages, English being among them, but not the priority. So I think that's the way to go. Having examples, I mean, with countries which are already advanced in the topic, and try to implement and see how other countries can follow and maybe 5 years, in 5 to 10 years time, to kind of assess. Yeah, so I think that's what I can say in the conclusion. Thank you.
This is Jafric
Thank
Radio.
you very much, viewers. We've come to the end of today's edition of The Voice of Africa. Our topic has been medium of instruction, or why are our textbooks not in African language? Why are our textbooks not in our local language or African language? And with me today was Mr. Achille Gildas. He's a research student in Japan and a social commentator. And I have been your host or sitting host for Mr. William Asiedu, the regular host. We thank you all for your attention and time with us. We hope to come back to you the next 2 weeks with another edition of Voice of Africa. Our producer for this program today was Mama Efe, and then our executive producer was Nana Yao Pop. On this note, I wish you Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
This is Jafric.
The next fortnight. My name is Yahya Seydou, caretaker host for Mr. William Asiedu. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you.
This is Jafric Radio. Jafric Radio.
Debrifedue Obarima Emmanuel Osebunsu Debrifedue Ghana Association Ewo Osaka Ese Yema Entu Ghana Funyina se Yashri Yenuya Emmanuel Osei Bunsu Ochina 25th of December 2022 Anopa 11 o'clock Yeznebe Tumpem Ewo Sakaiku Tadei Sho Yonno 4-1 Sakai Shiricho Saijo Oho Ena
yɛde yɛnnua Emmanuel Osei Bonsu ɛbɛto mpem na ɛbɔ 1 o'clock ewia 1 o'clock yakra no echi kra de me fedue nipa bai so beye bi nenso obeye ni nyina bibia wo bia yenua Osei Nyankopɔn emfa okra enhie Nyankopɔn emfa okra ensie obi bia wo pay information bia no yesre say mo be frɛ 090 4560 7783 Mr. Benjamin oye mpanyimfo ni bi owo the Ghana Association in Osaka. This
is Jafric Radio.